Okay, going to do a quick preview here of the upcoming Blue Sky Bio Denture software release. We had to delay this a couple of times just because of a few bugs that we're working out, but we are very, very close. So this is what Blue Sky Plan is going to look like. You'll notice up here, right now we're in surgical mode, but we're also going to have Ceph, Ortho, Crown and Bridge, Denture. And so now that we've got the STL in, let's go to the Denture module. And so just for demo's sake, I'm only doing a single denture on this one arch. Let's pretend that the patient had their mandible cut off, so they only need one. I'm going to go up here and choose the teeth arch that I'm going to use. And so I can select them all. This patient happens to have just a really little maxilla, so we're only going to do first molar to first molar. And I'm going to add all of those teeth as a chain. Now these happen to be the nobilium teeth, so the nobilium tooth library is going to be in this. Those STLs, and so you'll be able to actually print a base or mill a base and then bond in the actual denture teeth. Or, you know, as time progresses, there may be the option that you want to mill or print the teeth. You know, you're going to have basically every option available to you in this software. You can even conventionally process. So until our printing materials catch up, what a lot of people may opt to do is 3D print a base, and that way they can stick the teeth in to do a try-in setup very efficiently, and then try it in with the printed base, and if everything is good, then have it conventionally processed by their lab. So we feel like this is going to be very valuable to labs as well. So I've positioned the teeth as a whole. You'll notice these are already preset, but now you're always going to have to do a little bit of fine-tuning. So I've got the tooth chain on now. And to me, it looks like the canine is in a pretty good position on this side, but these are going too far out to the buckle. So if I lock that one, I can push shift and pull this one in to conform to the arch better. On this side, the canine looks like it needs to come in just a bit, and then we can lock it and bring it the rest of the way. So you can lock these and just hinge them like a barn door. So it makes the setup time really efficient. And it's worth mentioning that if we're doing opposing arches, you would import the opposing teeth simultaneous. Again, they're already preset to this opposing arch, and so you can make all these giant movements without having to go in and individually detail teeth like you would if you were doing conventional denture setups. Now, if you want to individually move teeth around, you can absolutely do it. You can lock this or that. You can rotate teeth. It's completely open in regards to how you want to set these things up. So get as crazy as you want. But now we're good. Let's go now and create the denture. And so I can set this to allow for undercuts or not. And so let's position this with a path of draw coming in from the anterior. Any of that brown that you see there is areas of undercut. And we can change the axis of insertion. So why would you want to block out undercuts? Well, think again if you were doing more of a hybrid technique where you wanted to do a digital setup and try-in, but then you wanted to just hand that off once it's been approved to your lab. Well, then that try-in has to be able to have a path of draw onto and off of your master cast. And so in this case, let's do that. Let's make this block out undercuts. Obviously, if you were going to directly mill the base or print the base, you would want it to allow undercuts. You would want it to engage everything, and then I would typically clinically adjust that in to the amount of undercut that's acceptable in the mouth. You can also define the posterior palatal seal. So let's do that. I'm going to push shift, and that's going to drop in a kind of stock posterior palatal seal shape. I can control the Cupid's bow, I can control the depth, and just a lot of the different shape parameters of this. And so we would do that. Once you like it, you can click next, and now it's going to make the model onto which this denture is going to be made. All right, here is our master model, and as you can see, it has think of this as in scratching in your posterior palatal seal on the back of your master cast. So now we're ready to select the denture base. So we can mess with the offset. Offset being how much of a spacer gap do you want between the denture and the actual model. So again, if you're trying to get this thing to fit back onto a master model, maybe you want to bump that up a little bit. Whereas if you are doing this to directly print it or mill it, you want it as tight as it can possibly be to the tissue base. And the nice thing being with this, as opposed to conventional processing, your milling or your printing of that base shouldn't have the same shrinkage rate that you would have otherwise. So again, I'm going to do a little sloppy job just for sake of time. Let's click next. All right, and here is the initial proposal of the denture base. So now we can define more for it where we want additional denture base built up into it, because that would typically be up into your contacts. Right now it's basically nothing more than think of it like a sheet of base plate, a uniform thickness laid across the master model. So let's build it up to, let's say, right in there. We could maybe even bump it up slightly. Click next. And now it wants me to define, okay, if you want to build it up to there, where do you want to build it from? So I'm going to have it build from basically the area of the ridge. And there we go. Now click next. And so as you see, the software built up more of a gingival base there. Do you see how this has extended up from that? Now it's still not going to be a completed base. So now we have all of the tools. We can use the add remove, and we have controls over the tool size, the tool strength. If I wanted to come in here and add something to this, I could click here, and that's going to give me these deform tools to add and subtract. I can smooth, and so same thing, let's smooth things out. The one that I find myself using the most is the local deform, because this is the easiest tool in my opinion for making large changes at once. So I can select a large area like this and I can just pull it out. Okay, so that covers up the necks of the teeth better, gives me more acrylic around the actual denture tooth. We can change the spot size to whatever it needs to be. So this is where your artistry comes in on digital dentures, is how much time do you want to spend actually doing some festooning on this, some digital festooning. And you can get as fancy as you want, basically. You can go in and put in little gingival margins. So when I'm doing the gingival margins, I like to go to a relatively small spot size, and I like to bubble this out a bit, right around the necks of the teeth. Okay. Then you could do the same thing with root prominences. You could put in some root prominences, you could put in frenal attachments. The sky's the limit as far as how much you want to do on this to make it look really nice and fancy, and that may be what sets apart an economy denture from a really high-end denture. But again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time since this is just a demo video. Let's just proceed with the case and go to next. It's worth mentioning also that if you wanted to, you could now just print this without any gingival festooning, and you or the lab that's doing this actually do the festooning on that in wax if it's going to be conventionally processed. And now we have the completed denture. So now we can go back to the surfaces. We have all these additional surfaces. You have multiple sets of teeth in this. And so if we now turn off some of the teeth, you can see these are sockets. All right, so one of the nice things about these nobilium teeth is that they have a lot of built-in retention into them. As you can see, there's a kind of built-in diatorics into the teeth themselves. So you would be able to take this physical nobilium tooth, pop it off the sleeve. Another nice thing about those, they don't have wax on them, so there's nothing really to clean off. You might just wipe it with an alcohol wipe. But then it's more or less ready to bond into the base, which is going to have the pre-made areas right here to insert the teeth into. And if you wanted to turn off the cast. Where is the cast? There we go. Again, I did not spend much time on the designing of this, but you can see the underside. I basically wanted to show you the posterior palatal seal. And, you know, something like that, I wouldn't even bother messing with. I would just print it and then hand trim that with a lab handpiece. But this is the end result. You would export this now. You would go to File, Export Data, and this would output these files, which you could then 3D print, mill. You could print the base, pop in the teeth, do a try-in, and since we blocked out undercuts, as you'll notice there are no undercuts in this cast, we could now do a conventional processing. So if you had your stone model that was mounted up, this should sit directly onto your stone model. Your lab could then just conventionally process if you still like that aspect, but at least you've saved probably half the denture bill by not having to do the setup and the wax try-in and the bite rims and all of that stuff. It's going to take your lab bill down to just the processing of the denture. So many options this is going to open up, and we're really excited about this coming out. Hopefully it'll be in your hands soon. Thanks.